Welcome to the CEO Pulse podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Rafael Cortez, and today we have Matt Larson with us. Matt's a real estate powerhouse, really saying it modest. You have over 4,000 deals under your belt.
Yep.
He's also been an entrepreneur for the better part of the last 2 decades, so pretty excited to have you, man. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, appreciate it. So I don't know a lot of people who have the track record that you do. I mean, it's that in itself, it's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But can you tell us how you got started in entrepreneurship and what was your goal right off?
Okay, so I've been in real estate 14 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I got out of high school. I grew up in a small town in Illinois, 3,700 people, and wasn't a great high school student by any means. And when I got out of high school, I didn't really know what to do for sure. So I played football, so I ended up going to college for 1 semester and just didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up leaving college and after 1 semester, and I needed a job. So my dad was like, here's a machine shop in town, go to work at this machine shop. So I went to work at a machine shop at 19 years old, and I did that all the way through until I was 30 years old when I got into real estate.
Oh, wow.
So I'll kind of tell you what happened and very quickly. So I was dating this girl. You know, that probably a lot of stories start with.
There's always a girl.
So I was dating this girl, and I had never thought about money really. I grew up poor. We just didn't have a lot, but I didn't feel like I was. I just didn't feel like there was a lot of need for money, and on top of that, I didn't know how to make money. I just thought, you work at a job and that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 30 years old and my girlfriend breaks up with me, and she says, the reason for breaking up with me, she says, I want to date somebody with status. I want to date somebody that makes money. And it hit me hard. I'd been with this girl for about 4 years, and all of a sudden I had a real reason to figure out how to make money. And before that time period, I'd never given it a second thought. So like probably a lot of people when they're a little stressed out and trying to like figure things out, I was up late one night and saw an infomercial. So I literally bought a program off an infomercial on doing real estate, and that was my entree into getting into the real estate world, and that was 14 years ago.
What made you pick real estate, or was it just kind of luck of the draw that it?
Up late one night watching TV, and hey, you can make money doing real estate.
No selective process
right?
at all.
No,
Let's do it.
No, I had never bought a house to live in. My parents had never bought a house. It's not something that it just happened to be the right message at the right time.
It's amazing how that happens. I've had that happen in my situation a few times, and it's been unreal. So I mean, I totally can relate to that. So you jump into real estate, and you're in your early 30s. You're 30 at the time.
30 years old, yeah.
30 years old at the time, and didn't look back. I mean, what happened? The switch between, in like that transition between you having a stable job and something that you could count on, paycheck.
Right.
Paycheck-wise, and moving into, because you're betting on yourself at this point.
Yeah, so what I did was I didn't quit my job right away.
Uh-huh.
I kept working for about 3 years.
Okay.
And what happened was I was doing some fix and flips, making a little bit of money, and at the same time I was taking that money and buying rental properties. And I had built up a small portfolio and was making about $5,000 a month in net cash flow after all expenses. And I lived a very, very cheap lifestyle at that point. I had built up enough cash flow that now I can leave my job. I'm making $5,000 a month, and that month was November of 2008. So if you go back to November of 2008, stock market was crashed. It was in half.
It was hell was breaking loose in the real estate.
The world was coming to an end. Yes. So it was, but for a real estate investor, that's perfect timing. If you know what to do, if you've built a good company based on fundamentals. So what happened was I left my job during, like, all my friends said, you are crazy. Nobody quits their job at this point in time in the economy. I left my job, and now all of a sudden I have all my time. So now I was able to put together in 3 years, I was able to put together a nice portfolio. Now with all my time, and I can spend, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I went into the Great Recession and I came out of it just, I mean, skyrocketed. I had done
Wow.
within 4 years later, I owned 450, or 5 years later, I owned 450 rental properties, and I had a company, and we were flipping. At that time, we were probably like in 2013, we were probably flipping 15 houses a month at that time.
And you were what, 34, 35 at the time?
Yeah, I would probably been about 35. Yep.
Oh man.
34,
Well,
35.
I mean, you knew how to capitalize on an opportunity where a lot of people get scared. We've talked about risk before in the show with other people, and it's just one of those things that there's no way that you can just sit down and then not ponder about the bad side of things. What could happen? What
Yep.
could go wrong? How did you manage that thought process like that? I mean, mindset. I understand there might be some fire, on the background, driving you, but mindset wise.
So let me back up.
Curious.
So I made the mistake of telling my friend. So I got into real estate. I did my very first real estate deal in 2005, November 10th, 2005. And I was pumped about real estate. I was excited about it. And I was telling everybody. And one of my friends, I said, I'm going to retire from my job in 3 years. And luckily, he remembered. Because now all of a sudden, it's November of 3 years later. He calls me up on the phone. Well, Matt,
Are you?
you told me you were leaving your job in 3 years, and it's been 3 years. And that, I was literally considering staying working. I was that nervous and scared. But he held my feet to the fire, so I said, you know what, you're right, I'm leaving. So I literally left. So does fear and risk affect me? Absolutely. But I can tell you that I do have a high tolerance for risk. I'm okay with, I mean, I've been able to put together a big portfolio and a lot of money over the last, 14 years. But at any given time, I'll put all the chips on the table. If I believe in something, I'll push everything in and go all in. Mainly because I know that, let's say I mess everything up, and let's say, I don't ever want to have to go through this, but let's say that I were to wake up tomorrow and I had lost everything. I know how to create income and money from real estate. And real estate happens to be one of those things that you can create money without having a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid of starting over. I hope I don't ever have to do that. But I also strive for very high levels in life, and I want to grow. I want to achieve the next level, and I want to achieve amazing things. So I'm not afraid to risk. But as you get older, I think you start to pull back a little bit.
Would you think that that's because of in your risk tolerance dropping a little bit, or your satisfaction in life and comfort for life getting higher?
It's a good question. I think a couple things. I think one is time. When you're 25, 30 years old, you think you've got all the time in the world.
Right.
You don't really think about death someday. You think, hey, I'm going to live until I'm 90 years old. Now at 44 years old, I know I have less time than I did 14 years ago. So timing is one of it, and two is probably I don't know. I think time more than anything. I really do. I'm not like I am more comfortable now by far. But to be honest with you, I live in a great neighborhood. I drive nice cars. I have a great lifestyle. But I'm a pretty simple guy. And that stuff is nice to have, but it doesn't make me happy. You know what I mean? I get happiness from achievement. So I think there's two types of entrepreneurs. There's accomplishment-based entrepreneurs, and then there's lifestyle-based entrepreneurs. And I'm an accomplishment-based. I like achieving. So and it's tough too, because I hang out with some, as you grow and you build your companies and your net worth and your wealth, you start hanging out with people that are like you, right? And I have a couple of friends that are very lifestyle-driven entrepreneurs, and they're thinking their exit, like, hey, I got 3 more years, I'm going to sell my company, I'm going to have $20 million in the bank or whatever it is. And when I'm in those conversations, I think, man, that really does sound pretty nice. You know,
It could be. It could. Well, here's the caveat though. If you're achievement driven though, I mean, it may be something that you're gonna be happy and comfortable with, with for a matter of maybe 3 months or so, and then you're gonna start going crazy.
Right. I'm not going to retire and sit around. What would I do? In fact, those are the conversations I have with my friends that are lifestyle-based entrepreneurs is, I'm like, what are we going to do? You know?
Yeah.
So in 2009, when I had built, just to kind of jump back in time, 2008 and 2009, I took 3.5 months off, and I didn't do anything for 3.5 months. I literally got in my car, drove to Florida, and lived in a hotel for 3.5 months to kind of celebrate my achievement of being able to leave my job. And I'll tell you, after 3.5 months, I was bored. I didn't have anything to do. So I'm not one of those guys that's going to take and retire and sit around and play golf. It's not my thing. I live on a golf course. I belong to the private club that I live on, and I never golfed a single time last year. So for me, I do like taking little vacations. One of my goals for 2020 is I'm going to take a vacation every single month. I'm going to go somewhere, especially right now when it's cold. I want to go somewhere every month. That's more exciting to me than leave for 1, 4, 5, 6 days in a month, get recharged, get new ideas, talk to new people, and then go back and implement.
Come back and crush it. I was having a similar conversation with Brent Daniels on one of the episodes, and we were talking about what to do after you figured things out. You can only sit at the beach for so long before you go crazy. Well, I mean, at least and I mean, I can relate to that. He can relate to that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I really like the way that you put it. I mean, the different styles of entrepreneurship, and it makes perfect sense. So right now you're doing big things in real estate, but what would you say is the problem that you're solving as an entrepreneur? Usually when people ask an entrepreneur what do they do, it's a cloud. I mean, do a ton of things, but it's hard to kind of pinpoint it.
So one of the biggest things that I focused on in the last 6 months, so if we back up, so right now my company, one of my businesses flips between 20 and 30 houses a month. And if I back up now I work about 5 to 10 hours a week on that business. And if I back up 6 months ago, that I was working 80 plus hours a week.
On that same
business.
Oh, wow.
And so I joined a mastermind, and I met the guy that runs the mastermind. His name's Mark Evans. And he told me, he's like, I'm gonna teach you how to do everything you're doing now, do it better, and you don't have to do any of it. And it's been amazing.
Wow.
So over the last 6 months, on an everyday basis, I took a little, I kept chipping away one piece at a time, handing that piece. Anything, I'd get up in the morning, same routine. I'd get up in the morning and I'd write down. I'd start doing my thing. Right, I'm an early riser. I love getting up early. I have a cup of coffee, and I nobody's up yet. I get a chance to think. I'm fully rested, and I like spending that literally that time by myself. Just allows me to just think. And so I'd get up in the morning. I'd think about what I'm going to do for the day, plan my day, and then I'd start doing. And the minute I start doing, I'd say, okay, what am I doing? Okay, I'm doing this. Well, that only takes me 15 minutes. I can keep doing that. And I got Mark in my ear, like, why would you, those little 15-minute, the things that you think you can keep doing in your company that are only 15 minutes, those things are going to add up.
Yeah.
And he's right. I mean, 15 minutes here and there, you do that on 20 things in the course of a day, you just burn 4 or 5 hours. So I'd get up and I'd take one thing, I'd step-by-step process it. How do I do that in my company? I'd write out, here's what I do first, here's what I do second, and then I'd create a process, and I'd hand it off to somebody else in the company and say, now you do that piece. Now, the next day, I'm doing one less thing.
You got 15 more minutes, in your pocket.
Right. And getting to the point where you delegate things in your company, that is not an overnight process. You can't wake up in the morning and say, hey, guess what? I'm out. I'm going to work 4 or 5 hours this week, and I'm pushing everything I do off to. You will have an avalanche of problems. Your business will collapse without you. So by taking it one step at a time, it's very painless. Like if somebody messes something up, now if you do the process right and you're super detailed, you can teach somebody else how to do a lot of this stuff. And if you do that right, you won't have any pain. Somebody will take that and they'll probably do it better than you. That's the crazy thing. If you've built a company and you've hired the right people, you're not the best at every job in that company. There's people better than you. I'll give you an example. The first employee I ever hired was my personal assistant. And when I interviewed her, I took a piece of paper and I wrote down, I drew a line down the middle, and on this side I wrote down everything that I did not like doing in my company or I wasn't good at, and I filled that side of the page. Then over here I wrote down everything that I was good at or I enjoyed doing. So what happened was I was working a ton of hours, like 80 something hours at that time.
Regular entrepreneur schedule.
Yeah. So I write down all these things that I don't like doing or I'm not good at. That becomes my interview sheet for my personal assistant. So now every time I'm interviewing somebody, I say I'm asking them questions about based around are they good at those things. And what I found was this. That side of the page would take me about 40 hours a week. No problem. I'll hire somebody, hand it off to them, and that'll fill up their week. And now it's off my plate. What I found was those things I didn't like doing them and I wasn't good at them. So they took a lot longer. When I hired my assistant, the things that were taking me 40 hours a week to do, she was doing it in 10. She was constantly in my ear like, I need more to do, I need more to do. So it opened up my eyes to, if you're not good at something or you don't like doing it, you will not be efficient at it. You will not have good productivity in that item.
Right.
So that just goes to show you that, as an entrepreneur, as the CEO of your company, in the beginning when you're building it, you have to do every job, right? Until you get some momentum and you get some lift and a push to be able to hand that off, you're going to do every job. And some of those jobs you're not going to be good at. And you're going to spend a lot more time on those than if you handed it off to somebody else.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I see is people trying to delegate too soon before they even figure out what they're not good at within their job. And then, you just have delegation without, for lack of a better word, indiscriminate delegation. Is that how you say it?
Well, you're exactly right. What it is you have people that I would almost classify them as lazy, and they're to the point they're so lazy they're not even willing to figure it out first. You can't, if you don't have any momentum in that one thing, you can't hand it off. It just doesn't work. You have to be willing to pay the price, learn it, and then hand it off. Now that can happen fast.
Right.
You can learn something fast. You dive in total immersion on one particular job in the company, in a week you're good at it, or at least you know it well. But what happens is, I think, as a lot of entrepreneurs, they see some of us guys that have built years and years in our company, and we aren't working as many hours as, say, somebody that's brand new, and they're like, I want that. That's the lifestyle I want. I'm going to go ahead and skip. I'm at step 1. I'm going to skip 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm just going to 10. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that you say that. You can buy systems, you can pay people good, you can do all that stuff, but you can't buy experience. You can borrow experience, but in theory, it's not going to be the same thing as applying it and being in the trenches and digging it.
I agree.
Digging the trenches while you're building the company, and that becomes something that's progressive.
Yeah. So. Hand a how to write a book or how to write a bicycle book to a kid.
Right.
Have him sit in the room and read the book, and then tell him go out and ride the bike. He's still going to crash.
Yeah.
Right. Until you get on that bike and start pedaling, you're going to crash a few times. But you can't learn how to ride a bike from a book. Same thing with your company.
Yeah.
You can't, how are you going to train somebody to do a specific job if you don't know how to do it yourself? You can't do it on theory. It doesn't work.
I love it. I love that. What's been one of your biggest aha moments throughout your entrepreneur career?
So I think it's the fact that one is when I started my company, I really got into everything. I thought, I am the best at this. Nobody's better. One of the biggest things, so 4 years ago, three and a half years ago, I hired my operations manager, the guy that runs my day-to-day. And I'll never forget, I was talking to a guy that was mentoring me at that time, and I told him, I'm like, he kept telling me, Matt, you need to hire an operations person to run your company. You're the visionary. You need to be doing some other things. You're doing things that you're not going to be the best at. And my argument was, no, you don't understand. I was literally in an argument with this guy, and he was far beyond me. He had done more than I had times 100. But here I am, thinking I know everything, arguing with him, and I'm like, you don't understand. I know the ins and outs of real estate. Nobody's going to know what I know. I can't hire somebody off the street to know real estate like I do. And he goes, you don't have to. A good operations person, it doesn't matter what business you plug them into, they know operations. They can figure out the little pieces that are unique to real estate. And I just disagreed with him, but I trusted him, and I ended up hiring an operations guy, and it changed my company. We literally exploded on growth. Every time you grow a company, there's going to be headaches. I don't want to mislead anybody. Like there's problems to solve, but I stopped trying to solve the same problems every single week. I got to solve new problems, which is amazing.
Solving new problems. Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you get stagnant on the same stuff over and over again, and then you don't empower your people to think for themselves.
100%.
And your team doesn't grow. Meaning, in a capacity of performance, they won't grow. They'll get stuck.
So like to that point, I use an analogy. Imagine you're going to a new city, and you've never been to that city before. You get in your rental car, and you're going to be in that city for a month, let's say. You get in your rental car, you pull out your phone, you GPS your way to your hotel, and you follow the GPS and you get all the way there. And now, okay, I got to go. The next day, you got to get up and you got to go to these places. And you do this routine, and every single day, you're following your GPS. Wherever it tells you to go, that's the routine. At the end of a month, you still don't know anything about that city. You couldn't get anywhere. You couldn't get in your car and drive to a single place without your GPS.
Without the GPS.
The same thing with your team. If you're the GPS for your team's not going to learn to think for themselves and not going to know how to solve problems and make decisions. The same thing is if back before GPSs were available, if you got in your car and got a map and kind of knew the area and just started driving around and looking around and spotting landmarks and, okay, I need to turn here, and okay, yeah, I remember that house and that building. After a month, you don't need any map or anything. You know how to get around. The same thing with your team. If you're constantly doing everything and telling your team to turn right here, go 3 blocks, turn left in the business, they're never getting to the point where they can run without you.
Right. You're always doing hand-holding. It's a difference between active learning and active processing, and allowing your team to actually learn actively, and then they can make their own decisions, at least to a degree, right? I mean, for example, one threshold that I had in my previous company was an expenditure threshold. If there's a problem that's worth less than $500 to fix, do not call me. And I mean, it may not sound like a really big thing, but it gave me such a degree of release from the company, and like the minimal stuff that it was totally worth it.
It's scary at first when you do something like that, you know. Because they're going to make mistakes. That's okay. That's how we learn. I've done this kind of the same stuff. But if you don't do it, what's the result? You're going to be solving $300, $100 problems forever.
Over and over again, and then you can't step away and then create $1 million opportunities because you're stuck on that $300 problem.
Yeah.
So as of the last 6 months, I mean, it sounds like your time, your personal time has it's a lot better. You're doing you mentioned that you were working 4 hours?
5 to 10 hours a week.
That's every entrepreneur's dream.
Right, because now I get to start a new business, which for me is
you can fill it in with something else.
Yeah, you start a new company. So for me, it's been education. Everybody's got a unique ability, and forever I struggled. Like, what is my unique ability? Maybe is it leading the company? Man, I don't think sometimes I do the best at that. And what happened was I figured out my unique ability is taking a complicated subject and making it easy to understand. That's my unique ability. And so I've done some pretty cool stuff in real estate. So now I'm kind of in the process of building my own education with real estate and teaching. Primarily, I'm going to teach new investors, as well. But I'm going to focus hard with people that are doing, hey, I'm doing 1 or 2, 3 deals a month, and I want to get to 10, 15, 20 deals a month. I'm going to show those people how to do that.
I mean, with your background, that's going to be huge. It's going to be huge, especially if you have that experience already empowering your team and then pushing that message across the table so they can produce for you. I mean, duplicating those results, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, one of the things that one little thing that I really shifted in my company that allowed me to be able to train my team without giving them the answer, and this changed my company, and it's so simple, is I stopped, some problem would come in, and I'd be copied on the email. And my natural instincts has always been, I'm a sense of urgency guy. I'd be the first one in there. Okay, here's the solution to that. Boom, 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 boom.
Put out that fire.
And then so my team, naturally, I'm teaching them how to be treated. And they're like, why? I don't ever need to answer an email that Matt's on. He'll jump in and do it. And I got to the point where this shift literally not only bought my time back, but it also trained my team. Is I stopped answering those, but I didn't avoid them. I didn't not answer. Here's what I did. Instead of saying, here's how to solve this, I said, what would you guys do? How would you solve this? Now their brains are going to work. Oh, here's what I would do. I would do this, this, and this. Now at that point, I can correct course if I need to, or say, that's amazing. That's exactly what I would do. Now I did that every single day for a few months in a row. And before long, my team stopped. Now I don't respond to those emails. In fact, I've told my team, listen, there's no sense in for me to be copied on all these emails. You copy me on something that you think I need to be involved with, but let's not waste my time, or, because one other way to save an extra hour or 2 a day is to stop having to, you're copied on a lot. Emails it's hell, right? Yeah. You get copied on all this stuff, and just the fact, maybe you don't need to respond to it, but just reading that, you do that 200 times in the course of a day, you've lost a couple hours. So the cool part is with me asking, how would you solve that problem? Now they're like, okay, we don't need to include you anymore, Matt, which is amazing.
How would you solve that problem? I love that. I'm gonna take that from you. So I had something similar that I learned from one of my previous mentors, and it was when somebody comes to me with a problem, they also have a solution at hand.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
So
Smart.
Sit down, and there's an issue here, and they already thought about it before they bring it up. It was one of the previous conversations that we would always have is, if we have a problem, let me know how you would fix it. And then I didn't get deeper into like give me 3 solutions or anything like that. It was just one, but it would at least initiate a conversation, maybe help me see a perspective or a point that I wasn't looking at, and then the whole workload wasn't on me anymore. They were being empowered at the same
I love
time.
that. I love that. What I call that being a solution-oriented person. There's some people are not built to be solution-oriented. They're problem-oriented.
Right.
If you present any challenge to them, they can only see the challenge, and it'll never work.
Yeah,
right?
They have a problem for every solution.
Yeah. But one of my core, when we hire off core values. One of the first core values that I hire. So I don't hire off of, hey, this person's got a 4.0 GPA and they graduate from the best college. I go off of core values. What's your sense of urgency? Like, I want to see how quickly, I want to hire the people that respond quickly. We're in an age of Amazon. You click one button, you order something, and it's here on Sunday.
Right.
And the Amazon has raised the bar on customer service, and like it or not, every other company in the world has to follow suit. So gone are the days when you could send an email or text somebody and expect it's okay if I hear back from them later this week. Those days are gone. We're antsy now. If you don't get a response back in 15 or 20 minutes, you're like, what is going on with this person?
I've gotten triggered where I'm not able to just start messaging. Most sites do that already, but that's a sense of urgency that's been fed into the day-to-day lives
Yeah.
now with customer service.
So sense of urgency is a big one, but also problem. I like to hire people that are solution oriented. If all it is problems, if they can't come to me with a problem with a solution like you're saying, or an idea of how they would fix that, they just won't make it. It's like all you would be doing in your company all day is people would be sitting around and complaining. So so that's one of the core values, is being a solution oriented person. Like let's figure this out. Let's not look at what's wrong. Let's figure out how to fix it.
How many core values are you at least when you do, because I think it's a very interesting concept. How many core values are you hiring for?
I think ideally you pick 4 or 5. You can get carried away and have 15 or 20, and that kind of defeats the purpose. Pick your top 4 or 5 that are important to you, and everybody's going to have something different. For us, I like sense of urgency. I like being solution oriented. I like somebody that's hardworking. Somebody that's going to go the extra mile. If you've got a tight deadline on something, like I challenged my team this week. We had this education piece that I'm building, and I told my team I needed it done by Saturday, by the end of the day. And I don't make everybody work Saturdays, and so I gave it to, typically you find the top performing. You need to hit a deadline. First of all, it's typically somebody that's already overloaded, but they're just hard working. They figure it out. They make it happen. So I hand off this project to her, and literally like 3 hours ago, she sends it to me. Completed and done and amazing. So I want somebody that's hard working, and then they have to be accurate with what they do. I don't need somebody to respond really quick, work really hard, be solution oriented, but at the end it's crap, right? And it's like what you just built, you just wasted your time. So those, yes, exactly. So and then imagine that same person is working with your customers in some sense, in some form, and you don't want that customer to say, "Hey, that's totally wrong. I just this won't work." So those are like my 4 that, and of course I want everybody to say please, say thank you, and show up on time and do what you say you're going to do.
Social awareness. I mean, it's not as common as you might think nowadays, but it's still it's still huge. There's a lot of disconnect with social media and everything. A lot of that personal one-to-one skill set is kind of fading away. I see it even on the younger generations, but it's still, it's vital.
Yeah.
So over the last 6 months, you've kind of stepped away from the business a little more. You've been able to refocus, or focus your efforts in other stuff. How were you staying productive when you were swamped with the day-to-day stuff, the taskiness of things?
I was.
How were you staying productive and focused?
So I'm just an overachiever when it comes to work. I would just put in more hours and work more days, which is not good. There's no exit, right?
Did you have a specific way of laying out your day? Or?
Yeah, so I do have a daily routine. I'm very, like I said, I'm a morning person. I love getting up in the morning. It's total quiet, nobody's around, and I lay out my day. Because if you don't plan your day, and your day will run you, right?
Yeah.
So I've been really good about, I carry around a yellow pad wherever I go. I'm old school when it comes to writing stuff down, but I'll write out, on a yellow pad, everything that I really want to get done that day. Like, hey, I have to get these 5 things done today. These things aren't as, below that, these things aren't as urgent, so I can push those off tomorrow. And if I have enough time, I'll get to those today as well. So every morning I just write out in it. Typically what I do is I figure out what writes me the biggest check, because that's where I want to spend my time. If I can work on a task over here and it's going to make me $50, then I should probably be working on that. But if I got something over here that I can work on and it's $5,000, now that's going to go right to the top of my list. So I'm always very driven and focused on the things that writes me the biggest check.
I have a quick question, and this is more for me than anything else, really, because it's one of the things that I kind of bottleneck. And I do have, it's the same way that I lay out my day. I have my stuff, my priorities, and I prioritize my revenue and all that stuff. But I'm always second guessing myself on the priority of things when it comes to short-term gains and long-term gains. There's stuff that's long-term play that I'm working on right now, but it takes me, so it'll take, quite a chunk of my day, right? I don't want to just brush it off, because the short-term gains always, those keep coming. And
Yep.
how do you manage that?
So first of all, that just shows you how much wisdom you have as far as that's discipline right there. Because I sometimes don't necessarily do that right. Sometimes that big check that you can make fast is where you kind of focus.
It's talking to you right there, man.
Yes. So that just takes discipline. And you want to know what the cool thing is I've had some mentors in my life that were the world like their companies were producing them nothing right now, and they could easily step over here and go make $5,000 or $10,000 very quickly, but they had the discipline to say, you know what, let's take this a smart approach. I'm gonna focus on this thing down the road here that's gonna pay me 10 times that. So I would say I'm not an expert at some of those things, but I've gotten better at it over the years. So I do look at that, and especially when you get older, I think the older you get, the more you think about that stuff.
Right.
For me, a lot of that is like buying apartment buildings that I might own this apartment building for 12 months before it really starts to pay me. But once it does, boom, it's big. So for me, it's the passive income side of things where if I go after a little bit bigger project, it's going to take a lot more time and money to get it to the day that it really starts to pay you. But once you got it, you're good. So that's kind of what I look at.
I like that. Yeah, the way that I've been kind of dealing with that is I'll give myself 2 hours in the morning just for creative time. We call it creative time because I don't know what else to label it. But anywhere, from 6 to 8, I'm just doing stuff that I know it's not going to pay me right now. But I'll have those 2 hours just kind of allocated to that stuff. So I'll sit down and write a book and parts of the book and or parts of the program or stuff like that I'm working on. And then when 10 o'clock hits, I'm not wanting to rush everything and get it done real quick just so I can refocus on what I want to do.
Right.
But it's still, it's still one thing that kind of weighs on me as far as priorities.
So I think what I do in some of those cases, I'm not as good at batching my day like that. I typically, on some of those projects, well, I'll give you an example. So we have a lake house. Where we live, I live in Iowa. We have a lake house over in Illinois that's about an hour away. But when you get there, it is peaceful. There's just nobody around. And I needed to do this really important project. And it was a long-term project, but I needed to get the stuff now to get the ball rolling. And I literally packed up my stuff, my car, grabbed an overnight bag, got my car, drove an hour, and worked on that with no distraction, stayed the night, finished up, worked till later at night, finished up in the morning, and then drove back home. So what I like to do in those cases, I'm not as good as batching it for a couple hours. I'll just take the day.
Become a train.
Yeah.
You become a train.
I have to, because once I get rolling, I can't stop. Yeah. I don't have that, hey, I got to stop at 10 o'clock. I just, for some reason, the way my brain works, I need to kind of that's what I'm working on today.
Right. No, I feel you, man. It's the same thing. I can go all day, forget to eat, and then still work 10, 11, 12 p.m. I'm still working on, some stuff, and it just, time flies whenever you're focused on doing something that you
does. It's crazy.
But then I have to, first, the way I see it is if I don't have the discipline to come back and produce this, taskiness, at least I'm not at that point where I can step away from the company and everything just, flows flawlessly. So it's one of those things like, all right, cool, I gotta eat my lunch before I can go out and play.
Right.
What I mean?
Right. Exactly. That's good. I like that.
Awesome. So you've done a lot. You've done a lot with people, and you've grown your company to an amazing, producing, entity. But as far as leadership goes, what do you think are the key leadership traits that an entrepreneur should have?
Some of what I think now is probably different than it was, 12 months ago.
Oh, wow.
One of the things that I think is important is leading with questions versus leading with statements. I was more of a dictator in my company, a year ago and beyond, and I'd come in and, okay, guys, let's do this, 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 and this today. This is what we're doing. And I did that. I was kind of ran my company like that for a really long time, and people would disperse and do that. And I'm thinking, I'm a good leader because guess what? I'm going to go out and work 80 hours this week, and my team's going to see how hard I'm working, and they're going to want to do the same thing. And they did. Like, they worked really hard. But what I found is the next level is not doing that. The next level is leading with questions. How would you solve that problem? What is your plan for achieving this week? And so that's transformed my company. That's the kind of leadership. Now they know my personality, they know my work ethic and everything, but now there's just this switch that's been flipped where they know now I'm relying on what their opinion is, and it's kind of like there's a safety net down there. If they fall off the high wire, I'm gonna catch them.
You'll catch them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it also gives your team that vested interest.
Mm-hmm.
People can get satisfaction from a nice paycheck, right?
Right.
But then we all have that other side of the human side of fulfillment that needs to be filled in, and I think that comes in with buy-in, with
100%.
Having a sense of meaning, and it just makes sense that when you run a company through dictatorship, it's do this, do this, do this, do this, and there's no real meaning behind the employees' efforts.
Yeah, they don't feel like they're part of it. They're just a cog in the wheel. If you ask them their opinion, then all of a sudden it's their company.
Right.
Hey, this is my idea. This is my company, and I do. Luckily, I have my company's filled with people that feel like it's their own, and I want them to feel that way because it is. A company's not a company's not a name on the side of a building. It's not a batch of LLC documents. It's the people within that company, and without them, there is no company. At one time, I used to say this. At one time, I was like, everybody can quit my company all the same day, and I can still run it and do all my own stuff and still run it amazing. Because I wasn't like, I'll just work more hours. I'm just a hard worker. I'll work 7 days a week. My company's too big now. There's no way. If everybody in my company left, I'd be toast. So that also shifts in your mind as well. When you get to that point one day where your company's so big that you aren't in control, you need that team effort, it shifts your mind.
It's two completely different levels of doing things. I guess when you're in the middle of that hustle and then pushing and pushing and pushing and micromanaging and controlling everything, you're pushing towards an outcome, right? Towards a goal. You're pushing to produce. Mm-hmm. But I think that what happens at some point is that you'll start to switch the pendulum over to the other side, and instead of pushing, you're just when you empower your team, when you do things like lead with questions and actually get the buy-in of the team, you start being pulled towards the production, and I think that's when you get somewhat relief.
Yeah. So
from all that.
That's my 2020. Mm-hmm. That's we just, with all the shifts that we've made over the last 6 months, we are today in my company where we are. With me not being around. I'm at the company on Tuesdays from 3 to 5 o'clock for a meeting. I have a cool dashboard that I get to look at to see all the important KPIs that I need to see, and my company is running it. The people in my company are running the company. They're making the decisions, and so I'm anxious. I'm very curious to see how my 2020 will end with me out of the way and with them doing what they're amazing at.
I like the way you phrased it, with you out of the way. Not with, you didn't say with me without doing the work, with me, you said with me out of the way.
Yeah. And
I think that's huge because I tend to trip over my own toes, a lot of the times.
Right.
If I get out of the way, the people that are working with me, they end up doing the work, the job, or the task a lot better because that's the one thing that they got to focus on.
So the one thing I'll say is there's a lot of people that maybe run their company and they're not there every day, and they've empowered their team to make decisions. The thing that I see a lot of, and this is tough, this is a tough one, but a lot of CEOs will make a decision, they'll make a mistake by saying, hey, they'll let their team get all the way to the end, they've gotten to the point where they're ready to execute on something, and then they're backed out of the company, they haven't been part of the whole process, and then step in at the end and say, no, I'm not doing it that way. My discipline has been, hey, they've gotten this far, they're letting me know this is what they're going to do, and old Matt would say, nope, I'm not going to do it that way, we're going to do this. You've just unempowered everything they've done behind that. It's just literally, it could destroy that morale. So we get to the end, and I'm like, okay, I might not make the decision they're going to make, but I'm going to let them make it, and we're going to see how this thing flows out. Because if I step in right now, no matter what, that's worse than if they make a mistake and it doesn't work out.
Right.
Because you're beating them up.
Exactly, and it brings down the confidence as well. So future performance is not going to be to par.
Right.
Before they start asking, questions about every single little thing again, you're back to fixing $300 problems.
Right. Exactly.
I like that. So since you started working or switching your approach in leadership towards your team, how have two things changed? One is overall productivity in the company, percentage-wise, and then the other, the culture within the company. Can you elaborate on those two?
I think so. I can say that the productivity. Since I stepped out, we've lowered our payroll by about $150,000 a year, which is big. That's a nice number for our company. So in other words, we've become more efficient. So with me out of the way, and with my team doing what they've done, now it's my guidance. I'm still leading them and giving them ideas and stuff, but I'm letting them execute. We've been able to save $150,000 a year, and is what it'll project out by the end of 2020. So I think that's been really good, and even if we do the same amount of sales in the same top line number, we've made more money. And I wasn't concerned about growth as much over the last 6 months and increased sales as much as how do I get my time back. So that's a win in my book. Same sales, but I don't have to be there 80 hours. That's a win.
Yeah. Well, then your overhead also drops. So
right. So it's a win.
Yeah,
it's good.
All around.
And then the second part of your question is the morale. It's better. It's their thing. It's funny. I went 2 months ago. I stopped at the office and was walking through, and I heard a conversation. And I jumped in there, and I'm like, hey, that's not how we do this. We do this, this, and this. And my operations guy goes, Matt, no, we changed the process. You're messing this up. Leave. So I'm like, man, I am too, because I didn't even know they had changed the process in which we were doing it. The new way was a better way, but I'm getting in the way. I'm causing problems. So it's better for me not to be there. They don't really want me there, and I don't need to be there. It's kind of like, you're driving your car down the road. Do you need to crawl under the hood while you're driving down the road at 60 miles an hour and make sure all the components are working? No, you're sitting in the seat. You got your dashboard in front of you. You've got your gauges. Okay, the speed's good. The temperature's good. We're all good here. That's where I need to be sitting in that seat watching the dashboard.
Right.
I don't
Making sure that the whole thing is running.
Right.
What's your function right now with the company? So you've stepped away. You delegated. I mean, almost. What would you say? 90%, 85%?
95.
Wow. So what's your job within the company now?
So if we've got, I'm still there for them if they need help on something.
Okay.
To be honest with you, they really don't.
They got it down.
They do. So
awesome.
I watch my job is the visionary. I will wake up in the morning sometimes and I'm like, oh, I got an idea how we should do this. So that's my job. As the visionary, I've got a new idea on what's something I want the company to do. Here's the idea, implement.
taking it to the next level kind of stuff.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the entrepreneur's dream.
Yep.
Have a machine so badass that you can just come in and then push a button and
Here you go.
There you go.
So that's it, really.
I love it. I love it. You mentioned KPIs earlier. I want to get a little technical here, but what would you say maybe the top 5 KPIs that a company should follow?
I think every company is going to be different on that. But for us, so we have the fix. We have the buying the properties. We have the fixing the properties up. We have the rental side, the management side of things. So I like to watch, like in my company, it's where's our vacancy rate on our rental properties, because that's a direct revenue. That's where you drive your rev, right?
Right.
So what's the vacancy? I watch maintenance, so I'll see what the percentage of maintenance is. And then on the rehab side, I want to look at the timeline on how long it's taken to rehab a house. Because if you've got, let's say you're going to make $20,000 on a fix and flip, and you've got it projected out at 90 days turn to get that rehabs, and it's 180 days, you're not making 20 grand anymore.
Right, you're burning through that capital.
Yeah, so I keep a close eye on those things, and then on the like on the leasing side of things, like when we're leasing, I like to see how long, on our vacancy rate, how long is the average house, vacant before it's leased. Those are the primary numbers. And then on the rehab side, I like to see where we end up for what we thought we were going to put into the house for a rehab number and where it ended.
I like it. Awesome. So, you've shared a ton of golden nuggets, man. I appreciate it. If you were walking down the street and you were to run into your 17-year-old self, what would you tell that kid? Or actually, it'd be probably the 19-year-old kid.
Yeah, I would say, man, I wish I could go back in time, but I would definitely say, don't feel like you have to do everything. Learn to delegate. Leverage other people, and keep your time. As the person running a company, you should be thinking more than you're doing. Less doing, for sure. And that was something at that age that would have been a tough message to teach myself at that age, because I was brought up as do more.
Yeah, do less it's a tough message to teach anything or anybody, I think, because it's kind of like it's been so wired into the way that the general population operates. And I'm speaking for myself.
You're wired.
Yeah.
Your DNA is set up to do more. If you want more, do more. And reality is, if you want more, think more. Less doing. It's the game changer. There's no way, think about the biggest companies in the world and some of the top entrepreneurs. They go back in history. Pick some of the, imagine Bill Gates, if he was at a computer and he was the programmer of the software. Their company would have 10 employees. There's no way. You can't grow and scale and leverage unless the top guy has to have an exit. If something in that company relies on you doing it, as far as the process, there's no exit.
Right. You're anchored in.
Yeah. And once you get to the point where you exit, now you're talking exponential growth. That's the exciting part where we're at with my company, is now I have my time. There's nothing in my company that I have to do that would hamstring or trip up the company. I'm not a gate at all. Yeah,
you got rid of you being the bottleneck, and I think that's. When we start a business, there's always going to be that. That's always going to be there. But the goal, the ultimate goal, is to get rid of the bottleneck, be able to step away from the company, and have it operate, on its own 2 feet. So it's really interesting that you say do less and think more. Are you saying that from a space of sitting down and working out the plan, or are you saying that from a space of interconnect? And I'm gonna throw a curveball here.
Okay.
But connection and letting for example, other people come in and help you out with the process, or can you clarify
if as long as you're a piece of the process, you can never scale. So that's why I say less doing. If you're let's say you have a 10-step process to produce a widget in your company. If you're any of those steps of that 10, there's no way you can scale because you've only got so many hours. Maybe you're an overachiever. Maybe you're Elon Musk and you're willing to sleep on the assembly line and work 20 hours a day, and you can do that for months on end. That's great. There's still an end. That's still going to end. As long as you're one of the steps in the process to make a widget, you're never going to scale to a super high level. So that's why I say do less doing. But the other piece of it is you're still the brains behind the vision of where that company's going to go. You still have to get up every day and think about what's happening. How are you going to improve, right? There's you look at an assembly line. There's three main people in an assembly line. There's the somebody that is the assembly line worker. They're putting the wheel on the car multiple times a day. Then you have the assembly line manager managing every process and making sure it's run. And then you have the assembly line designer, somebody that's designed it, and now he's designed it. His job of that's done. But what if he wants to improve something? Maybe you're making a car every 20 minutes and you got to figure out how to make it in 18. Well, if you're too busy putting the wheel on the car, how are you going to have time to figure out how to cut 2 minutes out of the cycle?
Right.
So that's where I'm coming from.
I love it, man. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm excited about the stuff that's coming out. I mean, you with your background, your knowledge, and the way that you approach business, I think you're going to be making immediate effects on whoever you coach and comes on board with you, and then ripple effects from that. So I mean, that's just beautiful, and it's exciting to see.
Yeah, we'll see how it rolls out.
Awesome. Yeah. So where can we find you? If somebody wants to reach out to you, where can we?
Instagram is probably the best way. My handle's Real Estate Matt, MATT. That's the best way to probably get. I still get very involved with that. I spend a couple hours of my day on social media answering questions, and I'm very interactive, and it's pretty easy to get a hold of me and message me. It's really me when I respond. Maybe it won't be like that forever, but
you guys catch that? So get it while you can.
But it's I love taking some time out of my day and just answering questions and some of that stuff. So
awesome, man! I love it. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that you would want to throw out there?
We covered a lot of the stuff. The biggest piece is, and I kind of said this earlier, is as long as you're part of one of the steps in the business, there's no exit. There's no like, hey, in 3 years it's going to be different. No, it's not. In 10 years I'll retire. No, it's just not.
It's wishful thinking.
You have to figure out now, and it's easier when you're small. Do this when you're small. Figure out how to get yourself out of the company before you expand.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Once again,
I love it.
Appreciate you
Fun stuff.
stopping by and having a conversation with us.
100%.
So there you guys have it. There is no way that you did not learn at least 25 things from this conversation right here, right now. So it's CEO Pulse Podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. Stay tuned. Stay focused. You got this.